Hello, my name is Hashim Alawi. I'm the head of IT at the Shura Council of Bahrain. And I'll be also talking today about how in the IT department we've made things as easy as possible during the pandemic to make the MPs work easily and present all their arguments and all their participation in the council as easy as possible. I'll be sharing here today what problems we've had and what kind of solutions we have been able to implement to make these problems as minimum as possible. Of course, the pandemic was difficult on everybody. A lot of people have gotten affected by it, and at the council, it's no different. I mean, it was difficult for the MPs to come and attend the weekly meetings. It was difficult for them to have the committee meetings as well. So during the pandemic, the main problem was for the MPs to conduct their weekly meeting. The accessibility to the internal voting system was really difficult. They had to be physically there in order to use the system and vote on the agenda that they had during that day. So that was one of the main issues that we've had, is the ability for the MPs to access the internal voting system. Another problem was during the pandemic, it was difficult for the MPs to conduct their committee meetings. So it was a challenge for us to find a reliable system for them to have their committee meetings without any issues. One more thing was the ability to review the document, review that weekly agenda and the Hansard, which is the minutes of the meeting. It was difficult for the MPs to see that minute of meeting and share any kind of comments and approve it. Another major thing was the fact that a lot of the MPs, let's say they were sort of technically challenged. It was difficult for them to easily use these devices and these systems all of a sudden. One more thing was the ability to view the committee's reports and share any kind of comments. So when the MPs get to meet during their committees, it was difficult for them to see the documents that they had to review or read from or comment on. These are the main problems that we've had during the pandemic. So at the IT department, we had to come up with solutions to make this thing much easier, make their lives much easier, make their collaborations between each other so much easier, and doing all of that in a very secure environment and a very easily accessible environment as well. So our solutions was, first and foremost, is to migrate all of our systems into the cloud. A lot of the systems that we've had were kind of on-prem, so they were inside the council only. You couldn't access them outside of the council. And because of that, because we've shifted everything as much as we can remotely, it was easy for us to have different applications for different reasons accessible to all the MPs at the same time. And because of these innovations, we were able to conduct the first fully remote meeting on April 12th, 2020. So that was the first time the council in history was able to conduct the weekly meetings with everybody in their own home to make sure that everybody is safe. Because of that, in order to achieve that, we were able to integrate Zoom to conduct the meeting for all the MPs. During that time, there was a challenge of voting, how the voting was possible. So we had to develop an external mobile application that was accessible to all the MPs. And through that application, they were able to vote on the agenda that was presented by the council's chairman. So the integration between their mobile application and the internal voting system made things so much easier. In terms of the council itself, in terms of the building and the offices, we were able to introduce facial and temperature recognition devices throughout the council, just to also ensure that everybody is safe and, to be able to detect any issues before they happen. Needless to say, all the offices also were daily sanitized. They were making sure that everything was super sanitized every single day to make sure that the staff who were coming in weren't getting any kind of harm. So on the staff level and on the HR level, there were also a lot of training sessions that were being conducted remotely. So we didn't stop having training sessions for all the staff members. Instead, we actually even thrived during that time because there were a lot of different kind of training sessions, seminars, lectures. All of these things were conducted remotely. And it was very easy for the staff to attend these lectures or that training and to be able to fully benefit from what was happening during the training sessions. We also were using and utilizing different applications and different services such as Office 365, Zoom, Microsoft Teams. We were utilizing these on a much, much better level um, and training the MPs to be able to use them so that we can come full circle and be able to have everything integrated very easily. All of the MPs, they access all these systems from the iPads, their own iPads, and the council is also was able to fully remotely manage these iPads so that we can also cover any kind of security issues and to be able to protect the MPs from any kind of data breach. So what have we learned during this time? What have we learned during this pandemic? The main important thing that we've discovered, and this is maybe very obvious, but we need to make sure that this actually happens, is to have a contingency plan. Having a contingency plan is vital for the success um, of all these systems to make things happen so that work cannot stop. The MPs can do their job no matter what. The transformation from having the systems on-prem to the cloud was extremely helpful during this time. It made things so much faster, so much easier, so much cost-effective as well. So having a infrastructure on the cloud is extremely helpful for times like these. It's very important also during this time that the MPs are very aware of those systems. They know how to use the systems. So conducting training for the MPs is just as vital for making these systems become very successful and they're used by the MPs. Because if the MPs know how to use them, it will make everybody's life easier. It will be also much easier on the MPs to be sharing documents between themselves, to be aware of everything that was happening in the council very much instantly. Another thing that was really important during this time is to have the capacity and the ability to support the MPs during this time. So having a very qualified, trained support members of staff support members to be able to help the MPs. Sometimes we get calls, different times of the day, and maybe one of the MPs is going to have a meeting, but there is some kind of technical issue. So having a good support team is very, very important to make this whole thing work, to make the transition as smooth as possible, to make everybody's life much, much, much easier. So this is in a nutshell what we've learned during the pandemic. I think that the council has thrived actually during the pandemic because we were able to jump at least 5 to 10 years ahead of in the future in terms of what kind of systems that we've implemented to make the MPs work much easier and much faster. So thank you so much. I hope this was helpful and thank you.